My name is Kristina Kays. How many of you have had a class with me or have had me speak at your Genesis? And so you've actually been in the room when I've lectured before. Okay, for those of you who've never been in a room with me and you're sitting in the first 3 rows, now is the time to move back just a little bit because 2 things. I'm just kind of intense all the time, and I haven't had a classroom lecture opportunity in a few weeks, and this is just so exciting that you let me come and be here. And I have 5 hours worth of stuff, so I'm going to keep it to our time limit, though. So I was asked to talk. To you about my understanding of being known by God. But we go to George Fox where it's a be known thing, and that's really creepy if you understand the Hebrew. But we're not talking about that tonight. I do teach that class though. And so for background, if you don't know, this is my 15th year teaching at George Fox, which is why they told me I had to leave for a year for sabbatical. They didn't tell me. Some of them did. I am a clinical psychologist. In our undergrad program, Joel Greger is also a clinical psychologist, and he teaches part of the coursework. And when I'm not on sabbatical, I teach a good portion of the more clinical focus. The problem is I'm a clinical psychologist, so no matter what I teach is through a clinical psychology lens. And my whole interest is, yes, so what? Like, we get this stuff, and what does that therefore mean for me? There's some words missing. Sorry, little retrieval problem. In terms of how then is that to influence how I operate today, tomorrow, in my relationships, with ideas, and that's just how I think. So if that's not how you think, I'm sorry. Not that it's better, but you'll have to do some bridging to try and catch where I'm going with that. But most of us like applied stuff, like so. So hopefully you'll get something out of this be known component. I also do some work with the doctoral program on campus, and I don't know if we'll have a lot of time for Q&A, but I'll be here afterwards if you have some questions. And just don't ask my husband to tell a lot of stories, because he's like the master storyteller. So, okay, there we go. Do you guys feel like you know who you're sitting here to listen to well enough that you don't need to leave? Okay. So I have an activity. You guys have a piece of paper, and I would like you to do 3 things. I would like you to, and by the way, welcome to the 12th week of your semester. I don't actually have to count that, by the way, because I don't know if you've heard me, I'm on sabbatical. But I am keeping tabs on the fact that this is your 12th week. How many of you feel this is your 12th week? It's like right here. Yeah. Do you know there's a finish line? And it's like racing right here to your face. It is just 3 weeks away. And you guys will be, there's a little Thanksgiving thing in there that's really just terrifying. I would always get strep throat at 3 p.m. on Thanksgiving Day because I rested enough for all the germs to take over. And then I'd end up in ER. And at that point, ER was the Bill Academic Center. That was the hospital at that point. Oh, Roberts Center. So, okay, so you fold it in half. On the front of that, and you can title it or not, it's your paper. This is not for grade. Why do you not have your own paper? No. You'll get your own. Yeah, you're the VP even. Okay, so the first on the front is what do others think about me? Okay? And if you're like, oh, I'll write that down. You can code it, you can draw pictures of that. This is for you. This is not for anybody but you, right? And then on the back side, so you've got this book, right? Booklet. On the front, you're doing that, and then on the back, you're gonna write down, what do I think of me, okay? Does that make sense? It's just for you. But later we're gonna do word cloud, which is anonymous, and so you might throw some of those ideas up there so we can kind of get a feel for what other people might say. Does this assignment make sense? Activity. Assignment sounded great. Activity sounded fun. Okay, So can I move forward? You know what your activity is. All right. Okay. Here it is. So if you didn't check in earlier, so if you have your phone or a smart device, you're going to text to that number 37607 KKAYS. If you've already done that, now is the time to start typing in some of those things that others would use to describe you. Let's see if it works. It's also completely possible that I have a fail on my poll everywhere because it's been that long since I've. So let me tell you that, oh, phew, that always makes me feel like I didn't fail. The reason I brought this up is I never really wanted a sabbatical because I love teaching. And my husband and I were talking and others were saying, maybe you should think about a sabbatical. And I was like, that just sounds like torture. How to get kicked out of all the things I like to do. Not maybe the grading part, you know, right? But the interacting with you. And I was at a retreat, and one of the last minute things this retreat speaker had us do was fold this paper in half and write down the things on the front. Well, I'm a teacher. I get course evals all the time. So I get lots of feedback on what people think about me. Some of them are fun, some of them, you know, corrective, constructive. And I didn't have a problem with what others. Interesting, some other people at that retreat they didn't have a sense of what others thought of them. And that was curious because I have so much feedback that was new information. On the back, writing down what I thought of myself. Well, I'm rather self-absorbed because that's kind of a human thing. But I think about myself, trying to make myself a better person half the time, but it came out rather bimodal. I just wanted to throw in a statistical term so that it sounded like I went to grad school right there. So bimodal, it was like a lot of positives and a lot of negatives about me. That was really interesting. I had to start using and in there. I wrote this and this so I could moderate and have maybe my edited version of a whole picture of me, but I wasn't really impressed with what I said about myself. Now, I won't tell you what the inside is yet, because we'll get to that in a little bit. But when we opened up the inside and had to do that one, I ran into the fact that I had nothing to write down that was authentic. I was like, oh, shucks. And I came home from that retreat and was talking to Robert about that, and that became the actual fodder for you need to go on sabbatical. This is a core of what is intended for your sabbatical. Fortunately, I didn't have to tell in my proposal that that's what it was because it felt just a little vulnerable. But and then I had this great idea that when we started on the sabbatical time period, which officially was like August 15th at 8 a.m., so that's when the work would start. But I noticed that that's not how it works. I don't know if you've ever done that. I'm going to think about doing that, and then you start thinking then about doing it. And so the work started well before, like 2 years before, and it was not easy for you. Okay, what do you see? Are some of those that you didn't write up there, some that you might have written up there? So is there some overlap with some others in the room? If you don't know how these smart clouds work, the bigger they are, the more frequently they were typed in. Okay. Makes sense? All right. So let's go to the next one. As I mentioned, mine was bimodal. And because I didn't want to look back on that, I have no idea what that piece of paper is. That was really a sad thing. I should have taken pictures of it so I could see the growth. But you know, I think my moderator is smart enough rather than smart. But I feel, I'll just go with dumb a lot. So those bimodal kinds of things showed up. You guys are getting in the flow. You know how this is. And I'm pretty sure that stressed one would have been there in week 3 also, but maybe not as big. So maybe week 12 is a bigger one. Or maybe that's just a chronic life thing. I hadn't thought about this, but if you guys decide this is important, I could share the PowerPoint with you later. Okay. You seeing some overlap with yours? Words you didn't put up there, but you're like, oh yeah, that could be me too. Oh, me too. Okay. I want you to look at this because these are the people you're sitting next to. Right? Like, I thought I was the only one. It's never just. It's us. We live in a we, not like the game we. Anyway, we live in a we world, and unfortunately we don't understand that. We think it's them and me, but it's not. And I think one of the things, especially as a clinical psychologist, perhaps, that has been a part of my clinical work and my teaching is how can we be more aware that we share a lot more of this than we truly understand. Okay, move on. Thank you for sharing on both of those. So here is the topic. What's important about knowing? Well, in the study of psychology, this is also so it looks like I actually have a degree. In the study of psychological studies, how do we do some things? And I've got some listed, if you want to hurry up and shout some out. How do we study things in psychology, especially humans? Anybody? Pardon? Case studies? Experiments, yes. Observe, yes. So we also have some self-report, right? Surveys. Anybody in research methods or had it and you sent out a survey? Well, the interesting thing is, how do we know things? Well, are self-reports accurate? Maybe. Yeah, I don't know. Is a witness or an observer accurate? No. Is a controlled environment lab accurate? Mixed methods, just another vocab word. I'm trying to remember how to be a psychologist. Okay, and then in vivo, like we just get in it and kind of like immerse on. Okay, so what I want to remind you of is everything we do where we're doing research or observing or trying to understand things goes through a filter, which we might call a lens. A lens, yes, that's from my class. A bias, right? We all have a lens in how we see things that biases, including experiments, because even the questions you're asking are the bias. Does that make any sense? So how do we know truth? How many of you have had the counseling class? Okay, I can't use this then, because the rest of you, I want to save it for when you get there. But the truth is hard to know by yourself. Can you agree with me on that? Which is just really miserable because, well, maybe you don't want to know the truth. I do. Truth is a big priority for me. It's like a core value. I love honesty. It's not fun, but I love it, and I love truth. It's always fun. So we have biases that gets in our way of understanding things. And the thing about knowing others or being known by others is that perhaps the truth is important to us. Have you ever run into people, perhaps even yourself, that didn't have a good, accurate truth picture of what they were? Okay, so what's important about being known? Because knowing is one thing, but being known, right? Robert is my best friend, and we've been married for over 31 years, and he probably knows me the best of all humans.
Yeah, baby.
Oh, shut up. And it has been 31 and a half years of marriage and 7 days that weren't good. And they weren't in a row. And that's just because we're over communicators and pretty good storytellers. But one of the things that I have learned from this relationship is the more that I try to see myself through his eyes, the more accurate my perspective is. Does that make any sense to you? Anybody have any fear and trembling with that? Okay, if you don't, you should. And some of you know the story, but the first date I came home and said, I'm going to marry him. I didn't tell him. That's a bad thing to tell another person on the first date. That's like the fastest way to get rid of him. Didn't tell him that, but I wanted him, because of that date, I wanted to see myself through his eyes. And it took me a year to convince him that he wanted the same thing. And then we got married. So here's the thing. We don't know who we are on phone. Okay? So what's important about being known is having a clear and accurate identity. And at Fox, I know there's a lot of conversations about calling and purpose and vocation. And I think that those are valuable, but I think that to get to that, you may need to go back. You can't do that well by yourself. Which is terrifying, because what if they really see you? Right? You ready to leave the room now? Oh my gosh, I just shut up. So blunt. Robert and I got to become grandparents this last year. And they were so fabulous, they gave us twins. And the best part right now is they live with us. Not just the twins, but the parents. That's really nice too. So yes, this is Halloween. They are 6 months old as of last Friday. So that is Charlotte, and that is Ben. Do they know who they are? No, they're just working on names. And like when we call their name, they're like, oh, that's me. It's pretty fun, developmentally appropriate. And they're not Pumpkin or Mummy, by the way, just in case you were worried, that's not their real identity. Those children know who they are because of how the people caring for them see them and show them. Can you get your head around that? So the sweetest part of our day is when the door opens in the morning. Well, sometimes at the naps too, and they've been in their beds all night, and there's that monitor. They're in their rooms. They sleep in the same room, and they're talking to each other, or they're like, "Get us out of here!" in code, And then we get to come in there, and they're like vibrating in their little weighted snowsuits. They're like looking at us like, "The people who love us and are freeing us from our prison are coming." Which I think means you guys like us. That means we're special to you. They have no question whether they're loved. Do they look like they have any question whether they're loved? They really don't. And they eat well, so no failure to thrive, so we know those things are good. They will find out who they are as Charlotte and who they are as Ben by how the people around them interact with them. What a privilege we have to be able to tell these grandchildren that they are precious beyond measure. Root deep, please, because that won't always be the message, right? Okay. Can you turn on the second? Okay. Sorry, I was really enjoying the picture also. So why does this matter to me? Not just my grandchildren. As a person, because it helps me know, honestly, why to get up in the morning. If you have, or if you in the future were to have abnormal psychology with me, you would hear that I have dealt with depression. I'm still working on it, and I'm doing well. But it is something that's a part of who I am and how I operate. So why does this matter? Because that's not my identity. Depression is not who Kris is. Okay. Kris is fortunately much more than that. And you are much more than anything that you're dealing with that's medical or mental or social or academic. But We have to be in situations where we are known and understand from those other people in our life who we are. Okay, so that's me as a human, as a psychologist. Because the reason I even went into psychology, besides the fact that it's entertaining material for someone like me, is because I wanted to make a difference in the lives of other people so that they didn't get so stuck with what I would call now untruths. And what I understand now is that the work I get to do as a teacher, as an advisor, as a mentor, as a clinical psychologist, is to help people see themselves from other perspectives than their own limited, tainted by a negative